Alright, listen up, kindred spirits. You know life isn't always a walk in the park. Sometimes it feels like you're navigating a minefield with everyone around you trying to set off the explosives. But here's a truth I've learned the hard way. Don't let anyone dim your light, especially when heaven itself has put a spotlight on you. Let's be honest, haven't you ever noticed how communities can sometimes act like a bunch of drama queens? They gang up, start whispering campaigns, and launch full-scale attacks, all aimed at bringing someone down. It's almost laughable if it weren't so painful. But here's the kicker. History is full of people who have been targeted for carrying something special. Think about Joseph thrown in a pit or prophets dismissed in their own towns. But those who carry divine favor always end up exposing the pettiness, not the supposed flaws of the one they're targeting. And now maybe you find yourself in a similar situation. They've thrown everything at you. Rejection, slander, betrayal, the works. Yet here you are, still standing. Not just standing, but rising, shining, practically untouchable. You see, the irony is that their attacks only made heaven show off in your life. What they intended as a burial ground became a stage. What they meant as humiliation became undeniable proof that you're favored beyond measure. So take a deep breath and listen close. I'm not just going to tell you that you're favored. We're going to dig into why their collective hate wasn't a sign of your failure, but the clearest evidence of your divine election. You'll understand why their attacks weren't just noise. They were announcements that heaven had its eyes on you all along. Number one, their attacks became your resume. Think about it. Every stone they threw became a receipt of your endurance. This is something people often miss when they see a chosen one constantly under fire. The community, with their petty insults, rumors, betrayal, and coordinated campaigns, thought they could reduce you to nothing. They thought your silence, your isolation, or your lack of support meant they had won. But here's the truth, every single attack became documented proof of your survival. You don't need to brag about your strength. Your scars tell the story. When someone is truly weak, a little pressure breaks them. But when someone is chosen, that pressure becomes evidence that they were built differently. That's exactly what happened with you. Every attempt to crush you exposed the fact that you could take hits that would have taken out anyone else. Their attacks turned into a resume, a record of trials that should have buried you, but instead revealed your resilience. Now people look at your life and see someone who made it against all odds. That's why your enemies are scratching their heads. They can't figure out why their best efforts left you standing taller. They can't understand how you survived storms that would have drowned anyone else. What they planned as humiliation became undeniable proof that you were protected and preserved for something far beyond their reach. This is divine favor in action. It doesn't erase the attacks, it doesn't stop people from testing you, but it makes sure every attempt works in your favor. They thought they were writing your obituary, but they were signing testimonies with their own hands. Their hatred documented your survival better than any friend could have testified. Now others see not just a survivor, but someone whose very life proves that nothing can erase the mark of divine election. They unwittingly built the evidence that you are exactly who heaven said you are. Think about it. Does this resonate with your story? If it does, drop a yes in the comments. It's time to own your journey. Number 2, they're realizing favor isn't fair. And this, my friends, is what's driving them absolutely crazy. They did everything right, according to their standards, kissed up to the right people, built their cliques, played the political game, and still ended up overlooked. Meanwhile, you were targeted, mocked, and pushed aside, yet blessings keep finding you like they're on a mission. It doesn't add up for them because they've been taught that effort, numbers, and influence should guarantee results. What they didn't account for is the hand of God, that unseen force that overrides all their calculations. The community that attacked you thought the power was in their majority, that enough people agreeing on your downfall would be the end of your story. But no matter how much they conspired, they couldn't stop doors from opening in your life, or opportunities from landing in your lap that they had been chasing for years. And it eats at them because they realize favor breaks every rule of fairness they've built their pride on. Favor isn't about who deserves it most or who has the loudest supporters. It's about divine selection, and that's what they're forced to come to terms with. They don't hate you because you failed. They hate you because you're succeeding in ways that make no sense to them. You didn't follow their formula, yet you got results they can't touch. And here's the part that burns them the most: they can't do anything to stop it. They can gossip, scheme, throw shade, but they cannot block what was sealed over your life. Their frustration is the loudest confirmation that you are favored. If your rise was fair, they'd be able to explain it away. Point to connections, shortcuts, compromises. But the fact that they can't explain it makes it undeniable. It forces them to accept that something higher is working in your favor. That's why their bitterness grows every time you win, because in their eyes you weren't supposed to have that resilience, that opportunity, that breakthrough. And yet here you are, proving that favor doesn't follow human logic, it follows divine will. When heaven decides you're chosen, no community vote can overrule it. Can you feel the truth of this in your life? Type "favor ain't fair" in the comments. Let's start a movement of those who know the power of divine selection. Number 3, they wanted you isolated, but heaven broadcasted you. This is the irony of it all. Their plan was simple: cut you off, discredit you, and make sure nobody gave you a platform. They thought if they could silence your voice in the community, your influence would shrink to nothing. They wanted people to forget you, to dismiss you, to see you as irrelevant. But instead of shrinking, your presence grew louder in places they couldn't reach or control. They underestimated how divine exposure works. Human beings think power comes from visibility in their little groups, but heaven doesn't play by their rules. When they tried to blackball you, they ended up making you more noticeable. Their gossip carried your name further than your own voice could have at the time. People who never cared to know you suddenly became curious because of how much your enemies obsessed over you. They handed you free publicity, thinking they were destroying your image, when in reality they were making it impossible for you to be ignored. You see, isolation has always been one of the chosen one's biggest stages. When you're cut off from everyone, God becomes your main promoter. You don't need clicks, networks, or constant approval when heaven is writing your story. That's why your name showed up in conversations where you weren't present. That's why opportunities started reaching for you even when you weren't campaigning for them. The same voices that tried to erase you ended up echoing your name so loudly that people who actually mattered couldn't help but notice, and now they're frustrated. They look around and wonder how someone they deliberately excluded is still being included on levels they can't touch. They can't understand why you, the one they labeled unworthy, are suddenly shining brighter than those they celebrated. But this is how divine justice works. When people conspire to silence you, God amplifies you. Their attempts to erase you only confirmed how important your presence really is. You didn't need their stage because heaven gave you one that made theirs look small. Their rejection wasn't the end of your influence. It was the beginning of your broadcast. Are you ready to be broadcasted? Hit that share button and let this message reach someone who needs it. Number 4, they're forced to witness the reverse harvest. The same people who spent years planting seeds of slander, envy, and curses against you are now sitting front row as their own words come back to choke them. What they sowed in secret is now sprouting in public, and they can't hide it. They thought they could dig pits for you and somehow walk away clean, but the law of heaven never misses. Whatever a person plants is exactly what they'll reap. And the irony is painful for them. Every evil seed they aimed at your soil is now growing wild in theirs. When they gossiped about you, they thought the story would stick. Instead, those lies became the reason people no longer trust their word. When they tried to stir up envy against you, they ended up exposing the poverty of their own spirit, because envy always reveals lack. When they cursed you, they didn't realize curses don't land on ground that's already blessed. Those words boomeranged and returned to sender, leaving them wrestling with the very destruction they tried to send your way. Meanwhile, your soil is flourishing. Everything they said would never grow for you is blossoming in plain view. You're thriving not because you fought them back on their level, but because heaven watered your soil. The divine hand they denied has been nurturing you, producing fruit that no one can deny. The more they tried to strip you bare, the more abundance sprang up around you. And now the contrast between their barren harvest and your overflowing one is undeniable. The embarrassment is sharp for them because it proves that they were never in control. They were convinced their collective effort could ruin you, but all it really did was ruin their own credibility. People can now see clearly who was blessed and who was bitter. Exposure has flipped the tables. Where they once tried to paint you as unworthy, their own actions have revealed their corruption. And the rejection they're experiencing isn't just social. It's spiritual. They shut you out, but now they're the ones being shut out of divine favor. That's the reverse harvest in motion. They're not just watching you survive. They're watching you thrive while simultaneously choking on the fruit of their own malice. And that sight alone is a judgment they can't escape. Can you see the harvest in your life? Celebrate it. Let the world know with a reverse harvest comment. Number 5, you were the test they failed. Your presence among them wasn't accidental. It was divinely orchestrated. God placed you right in their midst, not only to grow you, but to reveal them. The way they treated you was never just about social interactions, family ties, or community behavior. It was a spiritual exam. Every word they spoke against you, every scheme they plotted, every act of rejection was part of their test paper. While they thought they were simply putting you in your place, they were grading themselves, and most didn't even realize they were being watched. Chosen ones are walking measuring rods. Your very existence exposes hearts, jealousy, compassion, envy, integrity, love, or cruelty. You didn't ask to be the test, but you became it the moment you carried the mark of divine favor. And sadly, many of them failed miserably. Instead of choosing kindness, they chose cruelty. Instead of honoring, they dishonored. Instead of protecting, they betrayed. All the while, heaven was recording the answers they thought no one would ever check. Now the results are in, and the consequences are undeniable. Some of them are facing doors that will not open, relationships that are crumbling, opportunities slipping away, and peace that refuses to return. It's not random bad luck. It's the backlash of failing the test they were given when you were placed among them. They had the chance to recognize, to nurture, to stand with someone chosen, but instead they mocked and opposed. They marked their own report card with failing grades, and life is now handing them back the results. And here's the part that stings the most for them. You were the easiest test they could have passed. It didn't require a degree, wealth, or status. All it required was humility, love, and respect. Yet because of pride, envy, and arrogance, they threw it all away. Now they're realizing too late that mistreating a chosen one isn't just bad behavior. It's failing the highest exam of character and spirit. And once that test is failed, the consequences echo far beyond the classroom of community life. They reverberate into their destiny. You weren't their victim. You were their final exam, and they flunked it. Are you realizing you were the test type? Test failed? Know in the comments. Let's acknowledge the spiritual exams we unknowingly present to others. Number 6, their weapons became free advertising for your destiny. This is the irony that keeps them restless at night. Every time they tried to drag your name through the mud, they ended up making you the topic of discussion. They thought their defamation campaigns would silence you, but instead they handed you free publicity. The more they slandered, the more people got curious about who you really were. Their obsession with discrediting you made it impossible for others not to notice you. In trying to bury you, they became your unintentional promoters. This is how divine setups work. What your enemies meant as destruction became marketing for your calling. They spent time and energy spreading lies, yet all they did was spread your presence. People who may never have heard your name otherwise were suddenly introduced to you through the noise of your critics. When those people finally looked closer, the truth stood taller than the gossip. Instead of being convinced by the lies, many saw the strength, resilience, and authenticity in you that the attackers tried to hide. The weapons they forged actually highlighted what heaven placed inside you. The more they fought you, the more they revealed that you were worth fighting. Think about it, no one invests so much effort in someone who doesn't matter. Their obsession was the loudest announcement that you carry something rare, something valuable, something they couldn't replicate. They wanted to bury you in shame, but they ended up building anticipation around your name. They thought they were writing you off, but in reality they were writing your introduction. And here's where it gets even better, because they didn't mean to help you. They can't take credit for your rise. They can't say they endorsed you, supported you, or lifted you. Their fingerprints are only on the attacks, and yet those very attacks worked in your favor. That's why it stings so badly for them. They accidentally played a role in the very success they tried to prevent. Now every time they see you advancing, they're reminded that their own hatred gave you exposure they could never undo. Their weapons backfired, turning into megaphones for your destiny. What they launched as destruction ended up being the announcement that heaven had chosen you all along. Ready to advertise your destiny like this message if you believe that your story needs to be told. Number 7, they can't fathom why their majority lost to your minority. In their minds, numbers equal power. They had the crowd, the connections, the influence, and the mob energy. They believed that if enough voices spoke against you, it would erase you. If enough hands pushed, you would fall. If enough doors shut, you would never rise. To them, it was simple math. Many against one meant victory. But what they never understood is that heaven doesn't operate on arithmetic. It operates on authority. When authority is on your side, no number of enemies can outweigh it. That's why their majority crumbled. They underestimated the weight of divine backing. It's not about how many people speak against you, it's about who is speaking for you. You didn't need a crowd to defend you because the one who called you already sealed your victory. They thought their mob could silence your voice, but your voice was never powered by them in the first place. They thought their influence could choke your opportunities, but your opportunities were never dependent on their networks. What they didn't realize is that the spirit always outweighs the flesh. Now they're confused. They don't understand how their strategies fell flat, how their alliances dissolved, and how their overwhelming numbers still left them empty-handed. They can't process how one person standing seemingly alone still ended up standing taller than all of them combined. But the truth is, their numbers were never as powerful as they believed. A mob without righteousness is just noise. Connections without divine approval are just temporary. Influence without integrity collapses under its own weight. That's why they lost even with the odds stacked in their favor. What they're realizing is that battles of destiny are never decided by majority votes. Heaven doesn't take polls, it weighs hearts, motives, and spirit. When the scale tips, it always favors the chosen. That's why your minority wasn't really a minority at all. It was backed by the fullness of divine authority. They outnumbered you in the flesh, but you outweighed them in the spirit, and that imbalance is why their majority was doomed from the start. Their loss wasn't just unexpected, it was inevitable. Have you felt the weight of divine authority? Let us know with the phrase authority over numbers in the comments. Number 8, you exposed the poverty of their spirit. Your elevation didn't just prove that you were strong, it revealed how empty they really were. Think about it. It took a whole group of people with all their energy, whispers, schemes, and collective plotting just to try to bring down one person, you. That alone was proof that their spirits were bankrupt. Spiritually rich people don't spend their lives obsessing over the downfall of someone else. People who carry true strength don't need alliances to crush an individual. The fact that they required numbers manipulation and constant scheming against you only highlighted the void inside them. Your rise forced that emptiness into the open. While they were busy calculating how to keep you small, you kept expanding without their permission. While they invested in gossip, you invested in growth. While they tore you down with their mouths, you built yourself up with resilience. That contrast created a spotlight they couldn't escape. On one side stood your strength, your consistency, your refusal to fold. On the other side stood their fragility, their envy, and their inability to thrive without opposition. Suddenly, people could see it clearly. One person with divine favor outweighed an entire crowd with empty spirits. This is what happens when chosen ones rise. It forces exposure. It unmasks who really has substance and who only has noise. They thought the battle would showcase your flaws, but it ended up showcasing theirs. Their desperation to ruin you made them look smaller, weaker, and more insecure than they ever wanted to appear. Your survival, your glow, your steady rise made their poverty of spirit undeniable. They couldn't hide behind titles, influence, or social positions anymore. Their actions spoke louder than their reputations. Now the embarrassment sits heavy on them because your victory isn't just personal. It's a mirror that reflects their lack. Every blessing that comes your way makes their envy louder. Every win you secure exposes the fact that despite all their collective effort, they couldn't stop you, and that's the real sting. They gave their best shot and it wasn't enough. All it did was prove that their spirits had nothing of real value in them. Your rise didn't just elevate you. It stripped them of their illusions and revealed the emptiness they've been trying to cover all along. Feeling inspired to step into your fullness? Hit that subscribe button to join the community of those rising despite opposition. Number 9, their attacks only made heaven invest more in you. Every insult, betrayal, and scheme thrown your way didn't chip away at your life. It amplified the protection around you. They thought they were breaking you, but in reality they were triggering divine reinforcement. Every blow they aimed at you became a signal for heaven to step in to strengthen what they couldn't touch, and to shield you in ways they couldn't even imagine. Their anger, their plotting, their constant pressure didn't weaken you. It activated the very force that keeps chosen ones untouchable. It's not just about protection in a vague sense. It's strategic, precise, and unstoppable. Every effort to harm you forced doors to open, paths to clear, and resources to appear in your favor. Every word meant to curse you, every rumor meant to tarnish you only highlighted the divine focus on your life. While they were wasting energy trying to tear you down, heaven was simultaneously reinforcing every aspect of your journey, ensuring that nothing they planned could succeed. Their attacks acted like a magnifying glass on the favor that was already upon you, revealing it to the world in ways that no one could ignore. The more they tried, the more powerful the reinforcement became. They couldn't see it happening, but every attempt to harm you was like an investment in your destiny. Heaven didn't just protect you, it upgraded your covering, added layers of resilience, and made sure that no scheme could penetrate your purpose. Their intentions to weaken you backfired spectacularly because every act of hostility only confirmed your significance. Their attempts to shake your foundation became the very reason it solidified, making your position stronger than ever. What they don't realize is that chosen ones are never just shielded. they're reinforced through opposition. Their efforts to harm you aren't neutralized, they're redirected to work for you. That's why no matter how hard they try, the outcomes never favor them. Every attack they launch is secretly a reinforcement signal for heaven. While they fume in confusion, you continue to rise untouchable, fully covered, and more fortified than they could ever have imagined. Their hatred didn't diminish you. It expanded heaven's investment in your life. Type "heaven invested" if you can feel the divine reinforcement in your life right now. Number 10, they realize they're now the spectacle, not you. The tables have turned in a way that leaves them stunned. For so long they pointed fingers, whispered behind your back, and tried to make you the community's joke. Every insult, every scheme, every public attempt to humiliate you was meant to spotlight your flaws. They thought that by making you the center of attention in a negative way, they could control the narrative, dominate perception, and keep you small. But the irony is undeniable. The spotlight shifted and they became the story everyone is watching. Now every action they take, every complaint they voice, every attempt to criticize you publicly only exposes their desperation and their failure. They have become living examples of what happens when people oppose someone chosen and protected by heaven. The very energy they spent trying to shame you has ricocheted back, turning them into the spectacle that draws eyes, whispers, and judgment from all around. Instead of you being laughed at or dismissed, they are the ones under scrutiny. Their credibility, their composure, and their authority are now on display, and it's not flattering. Their obsession to control, manipulate, and degrade you has made them predictable. Every move is being watched, analyzed, and quietly judged by others who can see the contrast between their bitterness and your steady rise. What they once intended as a lesson in your supposed inferiority has flipped entirely. They are now the example of arrogance, envy, and failure. People see clearly who has integrity and who doesn't. They thought they were shaping the narrative, but the narrative has shaped them as a cautionary tale. While they scramble to save face, your presence continues to speak volumes without effort. You are no longer the target of ridicule or attack. You are the quiet force everyone respects and notices. They are the ones performing in front of the audience, showing the world how opposition to a favored one looks in real life. Every word, every gesture, every desperate attempt to regain control only reinforces the truth. They lost. You rose. They faltered. Now, ironically, they are the lesson, the spectacle, and the example, while you remain untouchable and elevated. Have you witnessed this shift in your life? Share this video with someone who needs to see that the tables are turning. Number 11, they witnessed that divine favor breaks logic. Every plan they carefully orchestrated, every scheme they thought would lead to your downfall seemed foolproof in their minds. In their thinking, your failures should have matched the magnitude of their attacks. They expected predictable results. Slander would isolate you. Betrayal would weaken you. Exclusion would keep you small. But what they didn't account for is that favor doesn't follow the rules of human reasoning. What seems impossible to them is routine in the realm of divine orchestration. Instead of falling, you rise. Instead of being blocked, doors open. Instead of being silenced, your influence expands. They watch baffled as every move they made to harm you only accelerates your path to success. What should have logically broken you has become the very mechanism through which you advance. Their sense of cause and effect fails because the power behind you doesn't respond to their measurements or expectations. Every attack that should have led to a setback instead triggers growth protection and unexpected breakthroughs. This illogical elevation is confusing and humiliating for them because it defies every principle they rely on. They pride themselves on strategy planning and social calculation. Yet all of their effort is undone by a force they cannot see or control. What they perceive as chaos is actually divine design, perfectly calculated and perfectly timed. Favor doesn't obey predictability, and it certainly doesn't answer to human schemes. They begin to understand painfully that they are powerless to influence the outcomes that are already decreed. The more they try to rationalize it, the clearer it becomes that favor cannot be explained by logic. You are elevated beyond understanding, promoted beyond merit in their eyes, protected beyond their reach. They watch as the impossible unfolds. Every barrier removed, every obstacle redirected, every blessing delivered in ways that defy explanation. Their attempts to predict or manipulate your life reveal only one truth. Divine favor doesn't play by human rules. When heaven decides to move, no plan of man can stand in its way. What they see is a reality where logic fails, but destiny cannot fail. Do you believe divine favor is illogical? Drop a logic-broken comment and show your faith. Number 12. Their hatred exposed their secret admiration. The intensity of their attacks, the way they obsess over every decision you make, every step you take, isn't just spite. It's a reflection of what they secretly recognize in you. If you weren't special, if you weren't marked by favor, they wouldn't expend so much energy trying to take you down. The very fact that they monitor, plot, and gather forces against you reveals a truth they refuse to say out loud. They see something radiant in you that they wish they could claim, mimic, or suppress. This hidden admiration is buried beneath layers of envy, insecurity, and fear. They act like they despise you, but every word, every strategy, every calculated attempt to discredit you is fueled by an acknowledgement they won't admit deep down. They know you carry qualities they lack. Resilience that cannot be shaken, destiny that cannot be blocked, favor that cannot be duplicated. Their hatred is loud, because admiration is quiet and vulnerable and they cannot risk exposing it. Instead, they disguise reverence as malice, but it doesn't go unnoticed by heaven or by anyone perceptive enough to see beyond their facades. What's fascinating is how their obsession continues to confirm your significance. The more they fixate, the clearer it becomes to others that you are someone of value. Their envy, disguised as animosity, becomes proof of your influence, your capability, and your favor. People who watch their behavior see the truth. If they weren't threatened, they wouldn't invest so much effort in opposition. Every campaign to undermine you ends up highlighting the very traits they wish they had. In the end, their hatred backfires. Instead of diminishing you, it becomes evidence of your worth. Every plot, every gossip session, every calculated smear becomes a mirror reflecting your strength, purpose, and the divine favor that surrounds you. What they try to hide, the admiration they dare not voice, shines through in their actions. While they may never admit it aloud, Their energy proves one undeniable fact. You are someone remarkable, chosen, and impossible to ignore. Their hatred doesn't erase your light, it confirms it. Do you recognize the hidden admiration behind the hate? Share this message if it resonates with you. Number 13. You became the evidence of a living God. For years, people argued, doubted, and speculated about whether God truly intervenes in the lives of His own. They watched injustice, cruelty, and betrayal play out, and wondered if heaven ever actually protected anyone. Then you appeared, not just surviving, but rising, not just enduring, but thriving despite relentless attacks designed to break you. Your life became the living answer to the question that had haunted skeptics. God does defend His own, and His hand moves in ways that humans cannot predict or control. Every trial they threw at you, every scheme designed to humiliate or destroy, only served to highlight the presence of something far greater working through you. People could see outcomes that made no sense by human standards, doors opening when there was no way, blessings appearing when there should have been defeat, victories emerging from situations that seemed impossible. Your journey became proof that divine reality is active, observable, and undeniable. You didn't have to speak a single word. Your survival, your elevation, your peace in the midst of chaos did all the talking. Even your enemies had to witness it. They could attack, slander, and plot endlessly, yet nothing they tried could remove the favor over your life. Their disbelief and confusion were evidence themselves. They saw things unfold that contradicted everything they thought was logical. Every victory you experienced, every time you overcame what should have defeated you, acted as a living testimony that God's hand was real, that divine intervention wasn't just a story, but a present and active force in the world. For those who watched from the outside, your life became a reference point. Your rise proved that the same God who protects His chosen ones in history is still at work today. You became the embodiment of faith in motion, a living record that heaven never abandons those it has marked. The skeptics, the doubters, and the oppressors all became unwitting witnesses to a truth they cannot deny. When God chooses, nothing can stop the plan, nothing can reverse the favor, and nothing can erase the evidence. You are that evidence, walking, thriving, and undeniable proof of a living God. Can you feel this truth resonating in your soul? Drop a living God in the comments. Number 14. Their defeat is permanent because it was spiritual, not social. They believed they were battling you on a human level through gossip, influence, social maneuvering, and the approval of others. They thought that by controlling perception, twisting narratives, and rallying people against you, they could determine the outcome of your life. They measured power in numbers, reputation, and alliances, never realizing that the real battlefield was beyond what eyes can see and hands can manipulate. Their understanding of victory was limited to the social plane. But the judgment that fell upon them came from a higher authority, one that cannot be swayed, bribed, or outsmarted. The loss they suffered wasn't temporary or reversible. It was set in the spirit. Heaven doesn't operate on the same principles as man, and the decrees made in the spirit are binding. No matter how much they try to rewrite history, influence perception, or repair social standing, the spiritual verdict has already been delivered. They may appear to continue in the world, may gather followers, and may attempt to regain their place in the eyes of the community. But their influence against you has been nullified at the root. The energy they spent trying to harm you has backfired, and their fall from favor in the spiritual realm is irreversible. This permanence is what frustrates them the most. On the outside, they can still move, speak, and act as though they are winning. But the unseen truth is that they have been overruled. Their strategies, alliances, and attacks cannot touch the spiritual reality of your elevation. You are protected, endorsed, and advanced by a power that doesn't negotiate with threats or fear. The battle wasn't about who had more social clout. It was about destiny and divine will. Because it was spiritual, the victory cannot be taken away or diminished. No amount of influence or manipulation in the community can undo what heaven has ordained. Every effort they made to damage you only solidified your place and ensured their own permanent loss. Their defeat is written in a realm beyond human intervention, proving that when God decrees favor, no earthly force can reverse it. Their battle against you was never equal because you were never playing on their level. You were operating on a divine one, and in that realm their loss is final, absolute, and permanent. In the end, everything they tried, every scheme, every rumor, every act of opposition only served to reveal what you already were: chosen, favored, and untouchable. Their attacks didn't weaken you. They highlighted your strength. Their envy didn't obscure your light. It confirmed it. Every attempt to harm you became proof of your endurance, evidence of divine favor, and testimony that destiny cannot be stopped. You weren't just surviving, you were ascending. The higher you rose, the more the world saw what they couldn't destroy. What they thought would be your downfall became their own exposure. They revealed their emptiness, their obsession, and their envy for all to see. They tried to manipulate perception, but perception itself became your platform. Every plan they laid to bury you was transformed into a stage for your elevation, and every move to shame you became a spotlight on your purpose. In trying to defeat you, they only confirmed that you were carrying something far beyond their reach, something orchestrated by heaven itself. This is the reality of being chosen. Favor doesn't follow logic, numbers, or human expectation. It bends circumstances, reverses attacks, and rewrites outcomes in ways the world cannot comprehend. You don't just exist among people, you are a force that reveals truth, exposes weakness, and showcases divine power. Your survival, your rise, and your unstoppable trajectory are living proof that heaven's hand is on you. And no community, no majority, and no scheme can overturn what has been decreed. So stand in the fullness of your victory. Let your life speak louder than their words. Let your rise be the evidence that divine favor is real. Let your unwavering strength remind the world that chosen ones are always marked, always protected, and always destined to prevail. If this message shook you to your core, don't just scroll past. Subscribe to join the movement. Hit like if you are ready for a rise. Share this video to encourage everyone you know and back your own rise. Drop your chosen and unstoppable in the comments so that God will do more. God bless you. 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 Welcome, dearly beloved chosen ones. The universe remembers everything. It watches patiently, then acts with breathtaking precision. Forget the cliché of karma being a cold dish. This is karma amplified, adorned with undeniable proof, arriving at their doorstep with a resounding, "Remember me." Prepare to witness cosmic retribution so profound it doesn't merely humble, it reshapes their very essence. This is the kind of reversal that elicits whispers. They must have truly crossed the wrong person. A harsh reality many overlook, backed by psychological insights. Those who actively undermine others often exist in a bubble of invincibility until the very chaos they unleashed obliterates their own carefully constructed world. And when it does, it's not just their reputation that suffers. It's the shattering of their illusion of control. Understand this: when someone disrupts the tranquility of a chosen one, when they belittle what they cannot comprehend, when they weaponize falsehoods to assassinate a soul, the universe doesn't simply retaliate, it educates. And the tuition, everything they falsely believed was untouchable. Brace yourselves, because what unfolds is not merely ironic, but akin to spiritual surgery. This karma is not accidental. It's a divinely orchestrated response wrapped in poetic justice. And be warned, the laughter has ceased. Let's delve into it. 1. They mocked the pain you shielded. Now they are publicly exposed to the very vulnerabilities they derided. They treated your pain as a source of amusement, ridiculing the very experiences that almost extinguished your spirit. Your tears became fodder for jokes, your struggles transformed into personality defects, and your suffering became a shared pastime. Never did they bother to inquire about your quietude, your withdrawal, or the dimming of your inner light. They presumptuously assumed your brokenness rendered you inferior, weak, deserving of their scorn. Unbeknownst to them, your silence was not a sign of frailty, but sacred space. You were mourning, rebuilding, surviving ordeals they could not endure for even a day, let alone a lifetime. And now life has delivered a chilling turn. It has burdened them with the very pain they trivialized. But this time there is no cheering audience, no circle of supportive laughter, no applause for their mockery. The identical emotional torment you once faced, be it heartbreak, betrayal, illness, abandonment, loss, or mental anguish, has manifested in their lives, and the humor has vanished. Suddenly, their carefully constructed reality is collapsing. The facade is crumbling. They are unraveling in real time before the eyes of others. Their smiles appear strained, their confidence shattered, and their very presence haunted. Because karma didn't just revisit, it struck with force and in public view. Now they grasp the depths of your experience, but their understanding arrives too late. No apology can ever erase the way they casually dragged your name through conversations. No, "I was just joking," can undo the pleasure they derived from your suffering. What they perceived as weakness was in truth profound depth, and their perceived strength was nothing more than borrowed arrogance. Now they weep the tears they once scoffed at, burdened by the same weight they mocked you for carrying. And suddenly your narrative is no longer pathetic, but prophetic. Witnesses observe, and those who once joined in their laughter now whisper, they are reaping precisely what they sowed. That is the unsettling truth about karma. It strikes not where you are vulnerable, but where you feel most secure. And this time it did not come to gently teach, but to thoroughly humiliate. They didn't simply learn a lesson, they are living inside one. 2. Their curse ricocheted with such velocity they suspected you of retaliation. So convinced were they of your downfall that when misfortune began to plague them, their first instinct was not introspection but accusation. They could not fathom how swiftly their lives deteriorated after their actions towards you. Finances dwindled, relationships shattered, tranquility vanished, and everything seemed to go awry. A dark cloud seemed to follow them relentlessly. And incredibly, they actually believed you were responsible. Paranoia gripped them and they whispered amongst themselves, suspecting you of some form of spiritual intervention. Perhaps you had retaliated, or perhaps you possessed more power than they realized. But here is the revelation: they were the architects of their own destruction. You remained passive. You did not seek retribution. You did not perform rituals or incantations. You simply survived with integrity while they wallowed in wickedness. Their malevolence, their obsessive focus, their fuel of jealousy and ego coalesced into a self-inflicted curse. They projected such toxic energy that it could not reach you and instead returned to its origin. And when it did not politely knock, but tore through their existence like a spiritual wildfire. That was the unexpected consequence. They underestimated the swiftness, the inevitability of karma. But their malevolent intent rebounded so quickly because they targeted someone protected. Their abrupt reversal of fortune terrified them, shaking them to their core. They genuinely believed you were orchestrating it all. But that is how resounding the consequences became. They disregarded the fact that ill intentions do not vanish simply because they are concealed. Energy is indifferent to deception. It responds to the underlying truth. The irony is exquisite. They sought control but now plead for answers, for clarity, for peace. Once they sought to steal from you, they dismiss spiritual laws during their plotting, but now frantically search for protective incantations. They burn sage, desperate for understanding. They are terrified because something is clearly amiss, and they know deep within that it began when they targeted you, not because you are a sorceress or a warrior, but because you were innocent. And when innocence is attacked, karma doesn't merely respond, it erupts. 3, they fancied themselves as puppet masters. Now they find themselves trapped within their own creation. They believed they were the unseen masterminds manipulating others like chess pieces. They feigned friendship while spreading insidious lies. They gathered allies, distorted narratives, and moved with calculated precision, believing themselves too cunning, too connected, too charming to be discovered. Their ambition extended beyond simply causing your downfall. They sought to control its very orchestration, who would turn against you when it would occur, and its ultimate extent. Every action was deliberate, as if they were scripting your demise. But they overlooked a fundamental truth: those who dig traps for others often find themselves dwelling within one. The very web they designed to ensnare you is now constricting them. The lies they fabricated are rebounding. The individuals they manipulated are awakening, sharing accounts and recognizing patterns. One by one, the pawns are abandoning the board, realizing their exploitation. And now the so-called puppet master is in a state of panic as the narrative unravels a narrative they can no longer control. Questions are being asked that they cannot answer. The lies are accumulating and the web is collapsing upon them. There is no sensation more agonizing than realizing you are imprisoned within the very game you created. That is their current predicament. They sought to portray you as unstable, disloyal, or dangerous, but all they accomplished was exposing their own insecurity, control, and manipulative tendencies. Their thirst for power and recognition has become their greatest vulnerability. They can no longer maintain the facade. They are gripped by paranoia, constantly looking over their shoulders, fearing exposure. That very fear is the same fear they attempted to instill in your life. They were never superior to life itself. They were merely temporarily evading consequences. But karma is indifferent to timing. It is concerned with alignment, and they deviated from alignment the moment they embraced deceit. Now they are trapped within a reality of their own making, surrounded by superficial alliances and individuals who harbor secret distrust. It is the full circle they never anticipated. The web they wove was never intended to catch you. It was always destined to become their own spiritual snare, and now they are ensnared with no escape. 4. They prayed for your downfall. Ultimately, God answered their prayers for themselves. Their prayers for your demise were relentless, becoming an obsessive ritual. Every conversation, every thought, every interaction dripped with bitterness. They were not simply upset with you, they were consumed, fixated. They began to wish failure upon you with the same fervor that others wish for sunshine. And frighteningly, they genuinely believed their prayers were justified. They convinced themselves that your progress was a threat, your peace undeserved, and your blessings rightfully theirs. Therefore, their intentions went beyond mere hoping for your downfall. They prayed for it repeatedly, relentlessly. But the universe does not respond to names, it responds to energy, to intent. A corrupt heart cannot be masked with religious language and expect divine favor. Their prayers did not originate from a place of healing, but from a place of malice. And as a result, they did not align with your downfall, but with their own destruction. Unwittingly, each time they uttered negativity over your life, they were planting seeds within their own soil. Each time they whispered, "I hope they lose everything," the universe acknowledged, noted. You simply deflected that energy. Now everything they wished upon you is manifesting within their world. Confusion, setbacks, isolation, delay, loss. However, it is not punishment but reflection. Their prayers did not move God. Their energy shaped the outcome. Because when you pray against someone innocent who maintains purity of heart and integrity of action, the only outcome is the activation of a mirror, a spiritual boomerang. And when it returns, it does not knock. It enters as if invited. They look around and attribute their misfortune to bad luck, envious friends, spiritual warfare, anything but themselves. Yet deep down, they know. They know the things they wished on you were dark. They know the prayers they spoke were not true prayers, but curses disguised in religious language. And now they are haunted by the very darkness they unleashed. You had no need to defend yourself. You did not need to retaliate. Their own tongue set the trap and their own energy dug the pit. and now their own life crumbles beneath the weight of what they hoped would destroy you. That is not karma being cruel, that is karma being just. 5. They thought destroying you would elevate them. Instead, it paralyzed their path. They believed that stepping on you would lift them higher. They thought that removing you from the equation through lies, manipulation, or calculated exclusion would afford them more recognition, more space, more opportunity. In their minds, your success was the obstacle, not their own inadequacies. So they planned your demise as if it were a strategy meeting. Silent sabotage, shady alliances, backroom plotting. It wasn't just betrayal. It was premeditated, a calculated move to clear their path. But what they never anticipated was that removing you would not open doors for them, but would instead lock every single one they attempted to enter. Instead of elevation, they experienced exhaustion. Regardless of their efforts, nothing endures. It all collapses. Clients withdraw. Partnerships dissolve. Money vanishes. Opportunities slip away. And it's not mere chance, it's spiritual consequence. Because destruction cannot be sown with the expectation of a peaceful harvest. They built their dreams upon tainted ground. They tethered their ambition to a curse, and what they considered a clever strategy is now the source of their sleepless nights. The guilt is deafening. The karma is even louder. Their progress is stalled not by opposition, but because their hearts were never pure during their ascent. Their desire was not simply to rise, but to rise by erasing you. That ambition carries a steep price. They may have tasted initial success, recognition, power, but it is all withering now. The applause has faded, the spotlight has dimmed, and deep down they sense that something is amiss. Everything they touch seems to decay. Nothing endures, nothing flows. The truth is attempting to destroy someone who has simply remained in their own lane. Invites a curse upon one's own path. It is a spiritual law. They may not subscribe to such a law, but their lives are serving as evidence of its reality. They were unprepared for the emptiness that would ensue, and now they are trapped, haunted by their actions, tormented by their lack of progress. That sabotage did not elevate them, it exposed them. And what they buried in an attempt to halt your growth has now flourished into the very thing that is suffocating their own. 6. They turned people against you. Now people are ashamed they believed them. They went beyond merely lying about you. They launched a campaign against you. They cast you as the villain in stories you were never present for. In private, they tarnished your name, twisting facts, exaggerating events, and projecting their own guilt onto you. They formed group chats, whispered networks, and engaged in subtle shade and outright smear campaigns. And for a time, it was effective. People's perceptions of you shifted. They stopped calling. They distanced themselves. You felt the change, witnessed the glances, heard the echoes of rumors before entering a room. All you could do was remain silent and watch your reputation be trampled by those who did not truly know you. But time has a way of revealing the truth without haste. Gradually, inconsistencies became apparent. Patterns emerged. The individuals who criticized you for being overbearing began exhibiting toxic behaviors themselves. Those who blamed you for the problem somehow found themselves in conflict with everyone else as well. The lies began to crumble on their own. You had no need to defend yourself. You didn't need to offer explanations. The truth was speaking volumes. And now the very individuals who once sided with your adversaries are starting to feel the weight of their guilt. They are ashamed, realizing they were manipulated as tools in someone else's bitter agenda. Some did not intend to harm you, they simply believed the wrong narrative. But now that the masks have fallen, they view you with different eyes, softer, apologetic. They recognize that you were not the problem. You were the target, and they inadvertently helped paint the target on your back. What is most painful is that they never sought your perspective. They simply assumed. But as the dust settles, your peace speaks for itself. Your consistency speaks. Your growth speaks. And all those who once doubted you observe in silence, ashamed, regretful, and silently hoping you never discover the depth of their hurtful words. You were the authentic one all along, the one they mocked, the one they doubted, the one they turned their backs on. And now that the truth is undeniable, they are suffocating on every lie they helped spread. Because they now realize they bet against the wrong soul. 7. They celebrated when you were homeless, sick, or heartbroken. Now their stability is vanishing. They didn't just witness your suffering, they reveled in it. When you reached your lowest point, they found amusement in your pain. They cracked jokes, shared stories, and spread your circumstances like gossip. Some publicly feigned concern, but privately they laughed. They called it karma. They claimed you got what you deserved. But what they never voiced was their deep-seated envy of your strength. Even in heartbreak, homelessness, or sickness, you maintained a presence, a light that irritated their demons. They felt superior when you were diminished, safer when you were broken. They relished knowing you were in survival mode while they lived comfortably. Your pain provided them with a false sense of power, and the more lavish their lives appeared outwardly, the more they mocked your struggles. They believed they had triumphed, that you were finally defeated, that God had abandoned you. But they were oblivious to the fact that your suffering was not punishment but preparation, a reset. And while they mocked, heaven was rewriting your story. Now the shift has begun. Gradually the ground beneath them is becoming unstable. The money that flowed easily is dwindling. The relationships they were confident in are now strained. Their energy feels depleted. Their peace is shattered, and they are terrified because they cannot comprehend why everything is collapsing. But you do. You recognize the pattern. You know this is not coincidence. It is justice, a divine audit, a correction of energy. They laughed during your trials, now they cry during their exposure. The same eyes that once watched your struggles are now filled with fear. They plead for peace in the same spaces where they sowed chaos. And the universe is not cruel but fair. Their actions have returned not out of vengeance but out of alignment. You did not need to curse them. You did not need to plot. Life performed the calculations independently. And now everything they built upon your downfall is collapsing because it was never blessed. It was fueled by arrogance. And that arrogance has now turned to ashes. 8. They tried to play God in your life. Now they're experiencing silence from the divine. They went beyond simply hurting you. They tried to redefine you. They wanted to rewrite your story with their own pen. They believed that by controlling others' perceptions of you, blocking your opportunities, manipulating your connections, and spreading their distorted version of you, they could reshape your entire path. They sought to assume the role of divine authority in your life, dictating what you deserved, who should love you, and how far you should progress. This was not merely disrespect, it was spiritual trespassing. They distrusted life's natural course, so they attempted to manipulate it themselves. They whispered in places where they had no right to be tampered with what was intended for you, and tried to impede divinely timed events. All of this was done with pride, as if they were the gatekeepers of your future. But the perilous aspect of attempting to play God is that it ultimately leads to a silence that cannot be filled. And that is their current reality, a heavy spiritual silence devoid of answered prayers and complete disconnection. They pray, but nothing moves. They ask, but doors remain closed. They attempt to manifest, but nothing materializes. This is not because they are cursed, but because they overstepped their boundaries. They attempted to alter someone else's calling, and in doing so, forfeited their own alignment. The divine does not share authority with manipulators. It removes its protection from them. The absence they feel, the spiritual barrenness, is not random. It is the consequence of attempting to occupy a throne that is not theirs. Now they are spiritually exiled. What once flowed effortlessly is now laden with friction. They attempt to hear God but are met with silence. And that silence is not a test. It is a response, a message, a consequence. They touched what was sacred and tried to halt what was heavenly. And now they stand outside the gates they once sought to guard. The lesson is severe but genuine. When one attempts to play God in another's life, they forfeit their place in His presence, a loss that no amount of control can remedy. 9. They tapped into dark energy to harm you. Now that energy is consuming them, they crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. Their anger towards you was not merely resentment, but obsession. So consumed were they that they sought ways to break you spiritually. When lies failed, when isolation proved insufficient, they turned to darkness. They sought out individuals claiming to possess occult abilities. They paid for spells, readings, and rituals intended to obstruct your path, distort your mind, or harm your body. Some even engaged in these practices themselves, lighting candles, chanting names, writing petitions against your life, and invoking forces they did not fully comprehend. All of it done in secret, believing you would never know. But the nature of spiritual energy is such that it does not await permission to manifest. They were told it would eradicate you, cause you to vanish, teach you a lesson. And for a time it may have appeared to be effective. Perhaps you felt weighed down, experienced strange losses, were unable to explain sudden shifts, attacks, anxieties, or unsettling dreams. But they failed to grasp that your protection extended beyond candles and chants. You were shielded long before they even contemplated their actions. And as a result, the energy they dispatched could not remain with you. It circled, searched, and then returned with intensified force. Now they are sleepless, haunted by shadows, startled by sudden noises, hearing whispers, and experiencing inexplicable breakdowns. It is more than paranoia, it is infestation. Spiritual infestation. Their peace is shattered, their home feels alien, their minds are cluttered, and no amount of sage or crystals can cleanse what is rooted in malice. They failed to understand the rules. Spiritual law is real. One cannot conjure destruction without eventually partaking from the same dish. The energy they tapped into demands payment, and it is now collecting through fear, illness, and mental torment. They open doors they cannot close, and what once gave them a sense of power is now making them feel powerless. This is not your doing. It is their decision reaching its full circle. They were warned through conscience, intuition, and signs, but they ignored it all in pursuit of a false sense of victory. And now the darkness they sought to bury you with sits upon their chest night after night, refusing to relent. 10, they thought your meekness meant powerlessness. Now they're terrified of your glow-up. They mistook your silence for weakness and your humility for fear. Your ability to walk away from conflict, maintain composure in chaos, and refrain from defending yourself against lies led them to believe you lacked power. They assumed you were fragile, frightened, and defeated. But they never grasped that your silence was not surrender, but strategy. You were conserving your energy not because you were losing, but because you were evolving, while they were consumed with attempting to destroy your reputation. You were quietly rebuilding your life day by day, healing wounds they believed to be irreparable, processing pain they expected would leave you embittered, and discovering joy in places they prayed would break you. So there you have it, beloved. The universe has a way of balancing the scales, doesn't it? The core message here isn't about gloating or reveling in someone else's misfortune. It's a powerful reminder that our actions have consequences, and that integrity, even in the face of adversity, is its own protection. It's about understanding that darkness ultimately consumes itself, and that light, no matter how dimmed, will always find a way to shine again. It's about trusting that you are always protected, even when it feels like the world is against you. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Have you ever witnessed something similar? What lessons have you learned about karma and resilience? Please share your stories or questions in the comments below. Let's start a meaningful conversation. And if this resonated with you, if you found some comfort or a new perspective, please hit that subscribe button. That way you won't miss out on future reflections and discussions. Sending you all so much love and light, love and light, love and light, love and light. Welcome the awakened ones. Truth isn't a shield to cower behind. It's the sword that cleaves illusion. Here's a captivating idea. Social psychology reveals that when a person's actions clash with their carefully constructed self-image, they endure a psychological torment known as cognitive dissonance. In simpler terms, that palpable discomfort, that inner turmoil when your authentic self enters a room and their pretense falters. That's you instigating it. You are a walking, breathing testament to the enduring power of genuine existence in a world obsessed with appearances. And what unnerves them most is this: you're not even consciously trying to expose them. You're simply living in a way that makes their meticulously crafted falsehoods wither like fragile blossoms under an unexpected frost. The instant you arrive, the atmosphere transforms. Insincere jokes lose their humor, fabricated stories lose their conviction. and suddenly someone is avoiding eye contact as if they've just been reminded of a forgotten debt. Your honesty acts like a sudden floodlight in a den of shadows, and believe me, none of those residing within are eager to bask in its glow. Many mistakenly believe exposure is about revealing hidden secrets. No true exposure occurs when truth refuses to be silenced regardless of how many layers of justification are heaped upon it. And that's precisely why they struggle to tolerate you. Your very presence compels them to confront the one person they've been diligently avoiding for years, their own reflection. Firstly, you carry the mirror of self-awareness that most desperately avoid, a mirror reflecting the raw truth about themselves untouched by artifice. This reflection transcends mere physical appearance. It delves into the unfiltered essence of who they are when the performance ends, when the applause fades. You don't need to lecture them to point out their failings or even acknowledge their flaws. They sense it intrinsically. Your mere existence becomes a potent, silent confrontation. It's not that you seek to uncover deception. It's that your way of life renders lies unbearably uncomfortable and half-truths too cumbersome to maintain. Some have spent lifetimes perfecting the art of self-evasion, constructing elaborate facades of who they wish others to perceive them as. They've cloaked these images in charm, impeccable manners, selective memories, and carefully curated anecdotes. Around most, they can sustain this charade effortlessly. But when you enter their world, a curious phenomenon unfolds. The mask they've worn so faithfully begins to feel ill-fitting because you are not engaging with the mask. You are connecting with the individual beneath the one who knows you can see them. It is a disquieting experience because it is rare. Most will readily participate in the roles others play. People will smile, nod, and perpetuate the illusion, but you remain uninterested in such games. You offer no false praise to maintain superficial peace, and you refuse to ignore the discrepancies between words and actions. You treat truth as you would oxygen, an indispensable, non-negotiable requirement never open to debate. This explains their sense of exposure in your presence. They may struggle to articulate it, but they know that being around you evokes a level of self-consciousness unparalleled in their other interactions. They begin to hear themselves more critically, to notice the inconsistencies in their narratives. They feel the burden of their neglected realities. It isn't because you are judging them, but because you live without the need for concealment. And that perhaps is what stings the most. Deep within, they recognize the truthfulness of the reflection you offer. What they see is real, and it is precisely the version of themselves they have worked so diligently to avoid. You haven't exposed them with accusations. You have exposed them with truth simply by being authentic. Secondly, your existence shatters the foundations of their self-serving excuses. Many construct their entire lives around elaborate justifications. They've persuaded themselves that certain dreams are unattainable, that certain goals are unrealistic, and that compromise is simply the price of admission to the real world. They'll utter phrases like, "That's just how it is," not out of conviction, but out of a desire to avoid the discomfort of admitting they chose comfort over courage. It is how they rationalize remaining stagnant, avoiding risks, and never demanding more of themselves. Then you arrive and without deliberate effort dismantle that entire belief system. You don't achieve this through arguments or lectures. You do it by embodying the possibility of what they claimed was impossible. You become living proof that success can be attained without sacrificing one's integrity, that one can remain true to their values while still progressing forward, that one can rise without resorting to exploitation. Your very existence disrupts their narrative and compels them to reevaluate everything they've told themselves to justify their lack of ambition. That is the kind of confrontation most actively avoid. It is not loud or aggressive, but it is devastating to the ego because your accomplishments, undeniably real, render their excuses hollow. They can no longer conceal themselves behind the assertion that the system is inherently unfair because you have navigated it successfully. They cannot claim success demands compromise when you have proven otherwise. The moment you enter a room, the atmosphere shifts for them because their favorite refuge, the excuse, has just been demolished. It's not necessarily that they harbor resentment toward you. The situation is far more complex. They may in part admire you, perhaps even long to emulate your path, but admiration is difficult to admit when it is intertwined with the bitterness of being proven wrong. Consequently, instead of feeling inspired, they may become defensive, dissecting your methods, downplaying your achievements, or attributing your success to mere luck, all in an attempt to protect the fragile comfort of their long-held beliefs. And that is why they feel so exposed in your presence. You haven't merely challenged their excuses, you have rendered them untenable. You have become irrefutable evidence that the obstacle was never the system, the timing, or the opportunity. The true obstacle was their own lack of unwavering dedication to pay the true cost of their ambitions. Thirdly, you refuse to participate in their collective charade. Many environments thrive on unspoken agreements, silent pacts that everyone is expected to uphold. These are not formal contracts, but they are incredibly potent. They dictate things like, certain truths are never discussed here, or we all pretend this unacceptable behavior is normal, or certain individuals are protected regardless of their actions. It is how families conceal generational secrets, how workplaces shield toxic leaders, and how social circles maintain artificial appearances. Everyone is aware of the underlying truth to some degree, but the unspoken rule is to conform or risk ostracization. You are the individual who refuses to participate in this charade. You do not sign the invisible contract. You are not intentionally provocative, reckless, or seeking conflict, but you also refuse to swallow a lie simply to appease others. And that is where the tension arises, because when you refuse to participate in the collective lie, you shatter the illusion for everyone involved. You become the one individual who makes it impossible to completely bury the truth. This is not about spreading gossip or instigating conflict. It is about living a life of unwavering consistency regardless of whether you are observed. When you are present, it becomes clear that you are unavailable for manufactured peace or artificial unity. And while some may respect this, others perceive it as a direct threat. In their eyes, you are not simply being honest. You are threatening the very foundation upon which they depend for survival. That is why they often attempt to isolate you or label you as difficult. If they can convince others that you are the source of the problem, then no one will have to address the underlying issues. But deep down, they recognize that their fear is not of you, but of what you represent. You are proof that it is possible to live authentically without succumbing to the collective lie. You make it undeniable that silence and compliance are choices, not necessities. For those who have devoted years to protecting the system, your refusal to participate feels like a betrayal. It illuminates their own compromises, making their allegiance to the lie appear less like wisdom and more like fear. And that is the core of why they feel so exposed. You haven't named names or exposed their secrets. You have simply refused to participate, and that alone is enough to amplify the truth within that space. Fourthly, your unwavering principles cast a stark light on their moral compromises. When you live by a higher code, you need not point fingers or deliver lectures. Your actions speak with greater power. For those who have grown accustomed to cutting corners, twisting the truth, or settling for less than what is right, your presence creates unease. You are not trying to shame them, but the chasm between what you accept for yourself and what they have accepted for themselves becomes difficult to ignore. It is as if your standards hold up an unwelcome mirror, forcing them to confront their own choices. The tension stems from the quiet acknowledgement within them that they could have done better. They could have been more honest, more disciplined, more consistent, but they were unwilling to bear the accompanying costs. Perhaps they convinced themselves that integrity is inconsequential, that compromise is universal, that good enough is sufficient. These beliefs offer comfort, but your existence quietly disproving them disrupts the contentment they have been enjoying. It is not that they desire your corruption, it is that they long for your likeness, for if you were like them, they would not have to confront the uncomfortable truth that they could have chosen differently. Instead, you are tangible proof that living a life free from moral compromise is possible, a truth they would prefer to ignore. Thus, they translate their discomfort into hostility. They brand you as overly rigid, excessive, or self-righteous. These labels are not truly about you. They are shields to protect themselves from the necessity of change. Your refusal to lower your standards is not about judging others. It is about safeguarding the life you have committed to living. But to the unprincipled, it feels like a personal affront, because it forces them to confront the realization that their choices were in fact choices. They were not forced into mediocrity or compromise. They actively chose it. And now, standing beside someone who chose differently, they must grapple with that awareness. That is why your standards make them feel exposed. You are not demanding they meet you at your level. You are simply refusing to descend to theirs, and that single decision is sufficient to make them feel judged without a single word spoken. Fifthly, you discern patterns they believed were invisible, exposing their manipulations. Certain individuals are adept at concealing their true intentions. They operate with subtle precision, planting suggestions, manipulating narratives, and positioning themselves strategically to always appear in the most favorable light. They rely on the assumption that others are too distracted, too trusting, or too naive to perceive the trail of crumbs they leave behind. This is the source of their success. Most only perceive the surface, the carefully polished version of events, failing to connect the subtle details that expose the larger truth. You are different. You see beyond the immediate perceiving the underlying rhythms. You detect patterns in behavior, tone, timing, and choices that most overlook. A seemingly innocuous comment to another might be meaningless to most, but you recall its contradiction of a statement made months prior. A sudden act of generosity might appear benevolent, but you recognize it as a calculated move to buy influence. They cannot conceal their game from you because you possess a natural ability to read between the lines without even consciously trying. This ability evokes unease, particularly in those who rely on deception to maintain control. They are accustomed to pulling the strings while others dance unknowingly. But in your presence, the dance feels different because you have already identified the puppet master lurking in the shadows. Even when you refrain from overt confrontation, they sense that you have recognized their methods. You are not swayed by superficial charm or convenient timing. You have already mapped the path they are following, sometimes before they have even completed its construction. The true problem for them is not merely that you can see the patterns, but that you can remember them. You connect events across months or years, constructing a complete picture of the underlying reality. This renders their usual tricks ineffective. They cannot rely on your forgetfulness, nor can they feel comfortable in the assumption that you will only notice the obvious, so they feel exposed in your presence. They know that the game they have been playing in the shadows is completely visible to you. Even as they act as though nothing is amiss, they are unable to relax because they know that nothing they do escapes your notice. You have dismantled the invisibility they once relied upon, and without it they are left vulnerable. Not because you have confronted them, but because you have already perceived everything they hope to keep hidden. Sixthly, you understand the crucial distinction between niceness and goodness, seeing through superficiality. There exists a vast gulf between being someone's nice and being some good. Yet in contemporary society, the two are frequently conflated. Niceness is about presentation, the tone of voice, the smile, the polite phrases designed to maintain superficial harmony. Goodness is about substance, the decisions made, the treatment of others when unobserved, the unwavering adherence to integrity even at a personal cost. The difficulty lies in the fact that many have mastered niceness as a deceptive facade to mask a lack of genuine goodness. They know how to be agreeable and charming while simultaneously engaging in selfish, harmful, or even corrupt activities behind closed doors. You remain unimpressed by this performance. You do not mistake a friendly demeanor for a trustworthy character. You look beyond appearances and observe actions. You have learned that an individual who greets everyone with kindness is not automatically a person of genuine virtue. Sometimes they are simply adept at concealing their darker motives. And because you operate from a foundation of truth, not appearances, you can sense when someone's niceness is merely a superficial cover. This ability unsettles those who depend on their charm to evade accountability. They are accustomed to being liked, being trusted, and having opportunities presented to them simply because they know how to play the part. But in your presence, the mask slips almost instantly. You do not grant extra credit for politeness when actions belie the words. That makes them uncomfortable because their standard tactics, the ones that are effective on everyone else, are ineffective on you. For you, goodness is demonstrated through accountability, through treatment of the vulnerable, through behavior when unobserved. Pleasant words are insignificant if followed by selfish actions. A friendly attitude cannot erase dishonest behavior. That is why people feel exposed in your presence. You are not distracted by the packaging. You are focused on the contents, and here is the truth. Niceness can be rehearsed, but goodness cannot be convincingly faked for long. You are not deceived by superficial charm because you have learned to assess individuals based on their consistency, their actions, and their adherence to truth. Therefore, those who hide behind politeness become unnerved in your presence. You see the reality they have worked so hard to conceal. Seventhly, you possess a long memory, remembering what they desperately want others to forget, foiling their attempts at rewriting history. Certain individuals depend on the passage of time to erase their wrongdoings. They live as if the past can be conveniently rewritten, their mistakes and betrayals fading into obscurity until they are no longer discussed. They revise history to portray themselves in a more favorable light, minimizing the harm they cause, twisting events to appear as the victim, or omitting the incriminating details entirely. For many, this strategy is effective because most people either forget, move on, or choose not to delve too deeply. But you are different. You remember. You do not bear grudges, but you also do not erase facts simply because time has passed, and it is not just that you recall what occurred. You remember the sequence, the details, and the intentions behind it. You store this information quietly without needing to constantly revisit it, but it remains readily accessible. This alone makes people uncomfortable because they cannot rely on your memory to fade as others do. What unsettles them further is that you connect the dots. You are able to see how past behavior aligns with present patterns, revealing that previous actions were not isolated incidents. They are intrinsic to their character. While others are willing to offer clean slates repeatedly, you recognize that their mistakes are not accidental at all, but deliberate choices repeated in various forms. This makes you a threat to those who thrive on selective memory. They cannot control the narrative around you as they do with others. If they attempt to spin a story, you possess the necessary context to expose the fabrication. If they attempt to feign innocence, you can recall the precise moments that contradict their claim. They do not even need to hear you speak. Simply knowing you know is sufficient to make them uneasy. This is not about keeping score. It is about refusing to live in denial. You do not distort the truth to make others more comfortable, nor will you pretend something did not occur simply because they have decided it is more convenient that way. That is why they feel exposed in your presence. You do not merely remember the parts they would prefer to erase. You remember how all the pieces fit together, and that level of clarity is beyond manipulation. Eighthly, you flourish without joining their compromised circles, proving that integrity and success are not mutually exclusive. Some are convinced that the only path to advancement requires unethical behavior. They believe that everyone who attains a position of power must have lied, cheated, exploited others, or engaged in questionable deals to reach that point. This is their preferred justification for their own lack of achievement. If success demands compromise, then remaining insignificant becomes evidence of their moral superiority. It is a comforting narrative because it allows them to feel ethically superior while simultaneously avoiding the hard work and discipline required for genuine success. Then you arrive and disrupt this script. You are not simply surviving without compromising your principles, you are thriving. You have accomplished what they deemed impossible without sacrificing your integrity. And you have done so openly without concealing your true self or bending your principles to fit in. This challenges them because it reveals that their narrative is based on a falsehood. If you can rise without resorting to unethical tactics, then perhaps they could have as well a truth they would rather avoid. The aspect that unsettles them the most is the undeniable nature of your accomplishments. You are not merely scraping by while clinging to your morals. You are flourishing, and you are doing so transparently. There are no underhanded dealings to expose, no scandals to whisper about, no hidden secrets to undermine your success. You are proof that integrity need not be sacrificed for achievement, and that proof undermines their excuses. It also removes the shield behind which they have been hiding. If they can no longer claim that everyone at the top is corrupt, then they must acknowledge that perhaps they simply lack the discipline, vision, or courage to pursue their goals in an ethical manner. That realization is uncomfortable, so instead of being inspired by your example, some will attempt to discredit it. They will attribute your success to luck or claim you had advantages they lacked or assert that you are not as ethical as you portray yourself. These are simply attempts to defend themselves from the truth you represent. You did not set out to expose them. You simply chose not to join their compromised circles and still managed to win. And in doing so, you have shattered one of their most cherished lies, that success without corruption is an impossibility. You have demonstrated that it is not only possible but profoundly powerful. Ninthly, you are incorruptible in a world driven by self-interest, exposing their vulnerabilities. In corrupt systems, the fundamental premise is that everyone has a price. It is not solely about financial incentives. It encompasses favors, influence, opportunities, status, or anything else that can induce someone to sacrifice their principles for personal gain. Those who operate within these systems operate under a singular, unwavering assumption: given the appropriate offer, anyone will capitulate. This is how they maintain control. They do not need to resort to threats for most people. They simply need to offer temptation, but you disrupt this entire framework. When the offer is extended, you decline. It is not because you fail to recognize the value of what is being offered. It is because you value yourself, your integrity, and your long-term well-being more highly. That single refusal has a far greater impact than you realize. It not only prevents them from buying you, it also reveals that their control over others has never been about respect or loyalty. It has always been about transactional exchanges. And once someone observes you standing firm without accepting the deal, It plants a dangerous seed of doubt in their minds. Perhaps they too do not have to sell themselves. That is why your refusal feels like an attack. You are not simply declining an offer. You are demonstrating that the foundation of their power is not inviolable. If an individual cannot be bought, then they cannot be owned. And if they cannot be owned, they cannot be controlled. That is a significant problem for those who rely on transactional loyalty to safeguard their positions. It also compels them to confront their own choices. They know deep down that they said yes where you said no. They accepted the deal. So to wrap it all up, remember that your authenticity, your commitment to truth, and your unwavering principles have a profound impact even when you're not consciously trying. You're a walking embodiment of what's possible, and that can be incredibly unsettling for those who've built their lives on different foundations. Don't underestimate the power of simply being you. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Have you experienced this kind of dynamic in your own life? What are your strategies for navigating these situations? Leave a comment below. I'm really interested in hearing your perspective and continuing this conversation. And if you enjoyed this and want to explore more ideas like this, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos. Let's keep exploring together. Bring together. Bring together. Bring together.